Hi and welcome back. So let's try to create a blog. One of the things to realize when we're creating a blog is that only the currently logged in user is going to be creating a blog. So we don't need the user ID for anything in the root. So in order to create a new root for the blog creation, it is fairly simple. We simply say blogs new, for example. And then we define the method. And here is what's going to happen when this endpoint gets reached. And really what's going to happen is one of two things. If the endpoint gets reached with some data, or if the endpoint gets reached with no data. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to allow this endpoint to have two methods, either post or get. And remember that the user will only be able to access this endpoint with one of the two. And in fact, the user won't really know what endpoint we're accessing. Let's remember that as well. So if the method is post, I'm going to assume that the user pressed the submit button in the form. If the endpoint is get, the user just arrived at the endpoint. So when the user just arrives at the endpoint, I want to present them with a way to write the new blog details. And when the user sends me data, I want to actually create the blog. So the way to do that is fairly simple. Simply use an if statement. If request.method is get, else do something else. So if the request method is get, I want to return render template, where the template is going to be new blog.html. And if the request method is post, then I want to accept the data that has been sent to this endpoint and then create the new post. So how do we accept the data? Quite simple. Title is request.form title. Content is request.form content. And that is it. Sorry, instead of content, this is actually description for a blog. I nearly forgot that. And blogs only have title and description. Let's go into the blog model and make sure that that is the case. So title and description is everything. And then they've also got an author. And the author, which is not the same as the author ID, has also to be shown there. So the author is simply the current user. So we get by email, session email, and then we say the user email is simply user email, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so now we've got the user as well. And then what we do is simply create a new blog. Blog, or rather new blog equals blog. And here we have to write the author, user.email, or user.name if the user had a name associated with them. Then title, description, user._ID, and that's it. And the last thing is the _ID for the blog itself, but that gets created automatically. So we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to go into the user model and just check real quick that we aren't missing anything here. And indeed, it seems that everything is fine. So I just wanted to check that we aren't missing any details such as the name or anything like that. But indeed, users don't have a name just now. That could be something that we could fix. And so the author is going to be the user.email for now. Okay, so that's how we create the new blog. And then we simply say new blog save to Mongo. And then we return render template, the user blogs, where blogs is that. So that is an interesting aside. How would we simply return that? And the answer is actually we want to return not just a page that says you've created your blog, but we want to redirect the user to his blogs. And in order to do that, we are going to need to redirect the user to this function. So how do we do that? And let's have a wee look. So instead of returning the render template function, we're going to return a make response function. And this make response function, the only thing it takes is user blogs. And of course, it takes the user._id. So in our case, this will be the current user because we've got to that with the session email. But if we were looking at somebody else, then we could also return somebody else's blog. So for example, this could be useful if we were writing a blog for somebody else as a co-author. So that functionality is obviously not in our application just yet, but it could be in the future. So make response essentially calculates what this would return and then puts it here, and that is the function that we are calling. Okay, so let's have a look and see what happens when we access blogs new. So right now we need to create the template first, of course. So let's go and create the new blog. And I'm going to actually copy everything from register. Only that I'm going to change essentially everything. We're removing the class page form from there. The form is going to stay, but is going to be having an ID called new blog. The action is going to be blogs/new, and the method is going to stay as post. So this form, when we press submit, is going to send a post request to this URL, which in turn is going to say is request method get, no, it's post. That's what the form sends, and then it's going to send the create the new blog. If the user accesses the URL directly, that's going to be a get request. So we're going to render the template. Okay, and then we need, instead of a label for email, we need a label for title. Notice how it goes red because we don't have a title ID there. Okay, and then instead of label for password, is going to be a label for description. And then we need to do that here. And this has to be text as well, of course. And then instead of sign up, we can use something better like create blog, for example. Okay, so now we've got all the different parts of our application there. Let's see what happens when we go into blog/new. So we get a form. Okay, my blog. This is a web blog. And create blog. And there we have it. Hurrah! So that worked. And now we've got my 3 blogs here. Notice, however, we're still in blogs new. So that is an interesting one. If we refresh the page, we may or may not create another blog. So let's see what happens. Notice that created it again. However, if we press enter, we go back into the form. So maybe we weren't doing things exactly the way we should be doing them. But that is something that I'll let you investigate if you want to do that, or if not, we'll be looking at that later on in the course, of course. So, nevertheless, it does do what we wanted it to do. So, the next thing is to create posts. So, we're going to do that in the very next video, and it's going to be pretty much exactly the same. So, I'll see you there.